I get out of bed in the morning. I make things happen. I do what I say I'm going to do. I prefer doing my own things, and that's mainly because you can do everything that you want to do. When it's your own business, you just go, I'm just doing it. I don't need to ask permission from anybody. It's a much easier environment to get things done, you know, without jumping through hoops.
Today I'm with Danny Whittle, who was the brand director for Pacha nightclub empire for 18 years.
13 years.
And is now a co-owner of IMS, International Music Summit, here in Ibiza with Pete Tong. Danny, how did this all come about? Where did you start?
I've had a very strange journey, to be honest. I left school and went straight into the military, and I was served in the military for 6 years. I was in the Falklands War, I was in Beirut in '83, and then I left there and I became a firefighter for 10 years in Staffordshire. And then I had to leave the fire brigade due to a problem with my eye. I kept getting these things called reoccurring corneal ulcers, and they figured it was the smoke and the dirt, so I had to leave. And at the time, I didn't know what I was going to do. I really didn't.
How old were you at that point?
I was 31 at that point, 30, something like that. And, you know, I was going to like the unemployment office, and the girl was like, what do you want to do? You know, what job are you looking for? I said, well, I served on an aircraft carrier for 5 years and I've fought fires for 10. So what do you think I want to do? You know, that's not an easy replacement when it comes to adrenaline and job satisfaction and everything else. So she was super. She said, you know what, just take 6 months. Don't even come back. You know, we'll sort you out. Just you go and relax for 6 months and see what develops. And about a month later, a good friend of mine who owned a promotion company called Renaissance called me up. And I was always into music. I mean, I've always been a huge fan of music. And then Jeff said, do you want to run our logistics for our festivals and events and so on and so forth? Well, I can do that in my sleep, you know. And then what I quickly discovered was electronic music at that time was a very unprofessional business.
What time was that?
Yeah, you're talking 92, 93, 94, that era, you know, when I first got into it. And it was pretty unprofessional. It was like a bit like the Wild West, to be honest. And because I was sort of ex-military, ex-fireman, I get out of bed in the morning. I make things happen. I do what I say I'm going to do. So I quickly sort of rose through the ranks, if you like. And within a couple of short years, I was doing my own events. I was working on festivals for 40,000 people, 30,000 people, with Darren Hughes from Homelands and so on. So, you know, then I came to Ibiza, running Ministry of Sound in Pacha in the sort of late 90s. And then in 99, one of the best gigs I ever did, I set up the Millennium on Bondi Beach in Sydney with Carl Cox for 20,000 people. And I got the license for it and everything. And so I'd really sort of, you know, worked my way into the industry in a very high level by that point. And then the owner of Pacha rung me and said, do you want to come and run Pacha, basically? You know, we know what you did with Ministry of Sound and, you know, it was always the biggest night in the club. Why didn't you come and program the whole club? So I did. So January 2000, about the 5th of January, I got back from Australia from the Millennium gig. And I think within 3 days, I'd left London and I'd moved into a villa in Ibiza, and I was suddenly programming Pacha. So I had this nice transition that I think probably protected me from being too overwhelmed by early experiences, you know. So yeah, I couldn't be happier really with where I've ended up.
It's an incredible story, and obviously now you are part of your own. IMS is part of your own business.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about how that came about and how it was different running your own show from running someone else's show?
Yeah, and we listen. When I was running Pacha, we used to sit on the roof terrace at Pacha 7 nights a week basically, and I had Swedish House Mafia and David Guetta and Luciano and Defected, and Pete Tong was my main resident on a Friday night with a night called Pure Pacha. I'd also taken Ben Turner on to do, because Ben used to be the editor of Music Magazine. I started the Pacha magazine, and Ben came on board to be the editor of that magazine, which he does so brilliantly. So one night we were just sitting up on the roof terrace at Pacha, 2 in the morning. We'd had a couple of beers, and at that point Miami Music Conference had changed from being an out-and-out music conference to being sort of spring break mayhem with all the kids that really had nothing to do with the music industry. So then it all became about the party. So we all sat down and went, you know what, we've been going Miami for 10 years. Let's do an Ibiza music conference. And, you know, so we started chatting about it, and then we decided, okay, let's call it, instead of Ibiza Music Conference, let's call it the International Music Summit, because then we can go and do it other places in the world. So International Music Summit Ibiza, International Music Summit Singapore, and so on, which we did do. We actually went out and did Los Angeles, Singapore, Malta, and so on. That took about 1.5 years for us to actually act on that.
Why?
Well, you know, it was that discussion in August where there wasn't time to get it ready for the following year, because we had to think about it, we had to invest in it, we had to put our time and money and everything else into it, make sure it was organised. So we got to the next summer, and we're like, in May, when we opened the club at the end of May, me, Ben and Peter get upstairs and we said, you know what, we spoke about it last year, let's do it now, let's do it next year. We've got 1 year to do it, because normally we do it at the end of May. And so we just committed right there and then. I mean, we put money into it, we opened a bank account, we put money into it, equal amounts, the 5 partners. Everybody brought their own skill set, if you like, to the partnership, you know. Pete, the presenter, Ben, the curator, me, the booker, living in Ibiza. Mark, promoter, lives in Ibiza. Simeon, production guy, lives in Ibiza. So we all got our own little, you know, elements that were very interesting, you know, that were ideal for creating this event.
Did you split it evenly 5 ways?
Yeah. Everything was split 20% each for everybody.
Has that created problems in decision making?
No, not at all. To be honest, there's 5 of us, so we go with the majority in any way. But generally, we all agree. We sit and we talk about it. You know, we are sort of long enough in the tooth, and we've been in the business long enough to know what's going to work and what isn't, and what's risky and what isn't. First year, we got 90 people. And we were like, shit, oh my God, man, 90 people. Next year, 250. Okay, this is working. Next year, 600. Okay, now we do 1,500 delegates or something from all over the world.
How many years is it now?
This is the 13th edition, but we had to take 2 years off because of COVID. So this would have been the 16th edition. And it just gets busier every year and it gets better every year.
And what lessons have you learned along the way? From the transition of working for someone to basically running your own gig, and then when you're running your own gig, what have you learned about how to do that well?
I prefer doing my own things, and that's mainly because you can do everything that you want to do or you and your partners want to do. Running Pacha, sometimes I had to argue all the time with the owner to get things done my way, even with a track record that took Pacha to being the best nightclub on the planet at that time. I mean, it was busy 7 nights a week, fully loaded, packed every week. But still, I mean, even when I wanted to do the magazine, I knew we were spending 60 grand a month on outdoor marketing. So my idea was, well, why don't we spend 60 grand a month on our own magazine and charge other people to advertise within it? You know, so it was a very easy solution, but at the same time, I had to argue with the owner to let me do it. Whereas when it's your own business, you just go, I'm just doing it. You know, I don't need to ask permission from anybody. And, you know, the partners, again, we all discuss stuff. Ben has an idea, I have an idea. We discuss it, okay, great, let's do it, we do it. So it's a much easier environment to get things done, you know, without jumping through hoops.
And the final question we're asking everybody is, if you met your younger self in the pub tomorrow, what advice would you give them?
Don't change a thing. Absolutely don't change a thing. I've got no regrets. I loved being in the military, I loved being a firefighter, and I've absolutely loved 25 years in electronic music, you know. It's been a really great journey, and I really couldn't think of one thing I would do any different.
That's a great way to finish it, Danny. Thank you very much
Cool.
indeed for sharing time with us today.
Super,
Cheers.
thank you.